First of all, we have not put a ban on independent directors. We have promoted the number of independent directors. We have said there should be a minimum of at least that much, number one. Number two, your point that in large companies and especially multinationals that you referred to, you see, as I said in the beginning, and this is an important point not to lose sight of on the subject of corporate governance, that please draw a line between governance and management. Nobody is stopping them from being put in a position of responsibility and authority with regard to the various functions of the company insofar as management role is concerned. All we are saying is that if you have got an unreasonable number, a higher number of executives on the board, then that particular line of governance and management is blurred, which is not in the interest of the company. So we are not debarring the company from having executive directors. We just want a reasonable balance between the combination of executive and non-executive, and within non-executive, independent directors. Because we want the board to have the oversight role. We want the board to have the governance role. The executives they are referring to, they can certainly keep on discharging their functions according to whatever is their role, and some of them could be on the board as well, within the maximum limit that they have recommended. But to say that most of the executive directors should be on the board, then I think we are compromising on the importance of the board and the role which in law and concept the board is supposed to play. Because as I said, the board is the keeper of corporate conscience. The board has the oversight role. The board is the one who has got to see from the apex level as to how the company is doing. And if you blur this and intermingle this management and governance role, then I think, just as in internal control we say, if you intermingle some of the roles, then you can have the worst sorts of problems, including frauds and forgeries and whatnot. So this is merely a matter of combination. No one single number is a magical number which is justified and enough. But after all, international best practices do suggest that if you do it in this particular fashion, time has shown that it works well for the corporate sector.
So, Tamuzullah is my name. So regarding board evaluation, I suggest broad parameters should be identified. Otherwise, broad parameters of board evaluation. Board evaluation of board. Otherwise, every company will carry out the evaluation in its own way. And should it be outsourced, or the parents should themselves evaluate? If outsourced, it will be transparent, but it will be costly affair, and transparency and secrecy cannot be maintained. So second thing is that regarding you have said that the number of hours should not be more than 5. Will it apply to elected directors or nominated directors
Elected
also?
directors.
Nominated also, because NIT chairman is on the board of so many companies. So NIT is an important institute and they invest in so many companies.
Now that you have pointed out, I will read the provision. You might be right when you say that the maximum directorship, because you are not qualified with regard to elected or nominated.
Yes.
So I think the case which you have cited is a very relevant case in point. And it is from quarters such as that, it was quite often argued, कि जी हम तो 20 पर हो सकते हैं, 25 पर हो सकते हैं, you know. So I would assume that yes, it covers, let me correct myself in saying, it does cover both.
Okay, fine. So regarding independent director, my point is that independent can be implemented in true sense if the holding structure is also studied by PICG. Because if 80% holding is held by one group and 20% by A, B, C, D, E, F, then the independence cannot be in true sense. And secondly, those persons who hold 20%, they should be aware of their rights and duties. If you go to any AGM, you will observe that out of 200 shareholders, 180 hold 5, 10 or 2 shares. The persons holding 5,000 shares or 100,000 shares, they don't come in the meeting. So there should be awareness among the investor also, that what are their rights and duties. And it will be better, because few companies we have seen that small shareholders got together and they elected a director, and that was in real sense the independent director. If we leave on the companies, then it will not be in true sense. It will be independent, but it will be camouflaged.
Fine.
So the holding pattern is also very important in our sense.
I'll come to that. Let me first take first of all your first point with regard to criteria for board evaluation. You see, you would notice that ever since this code came to surface in 2002, in anything which was considered to be rather very drastic in our context and in our culture, our approach has been to have a bit of soft landing. Okay? We didn't want to come, as Mr. Khalid Mirza used to say quite often in seminars, it's a benign code. Why do you object to it? I remember when this original code was in the draft form, we were invited by an institutional body representing the cream of the corporate sector in Pakistan. And they had objections on that. Mr. Khalid Mirza phoned me and said, Ibrahim sir, aapko waisa chalna hoga. Fine, I'll come with you. And there have been very eminent people sitting around the table there, who is really the cream of the corporate sector here. And when they raised their objection after objection, and when they completed, my very humble submission was that all of you belong to a sector where you follow good practices anyway, whether there is code or no code. And therefore, my request to you is, point out half a dozen things from this code which you think are useless, which you will not be observing anyway, for good housekeeping, for good governance practices. You just point out half. And there was lull and silence in that conference room. They could not cite a single example. Because for any good companies, for any well-managed company where the management is delegated and where ownership is fairly sort of staggered, they have no issue with this code of corporate governance. I don't want to name a sector, lest I might offend them. But we have a large sector on the stock exchange where we thought that, I can tell you in the 2002 when we were deliberating on this one, I told my colleagues on the group at that time that हमारी जिंदगी में तो code नहीं आता. But fortunately it did come. Why? Because we had a forceful SECP and a forceful chairman behind it. And he thought to it that there is a merit in this. It will augur well for the corporate sector. It will protect the right of the investors. It will shelter the minority shareholders and so on and so forth. So it did come. So the idea is that when you're bringing in anything drastic, such as evaluation of the board, it is a concept which is not going to be liked by all. And that is why we stopped short of the overall board evaluation rather than going for each individual person's evaluation. Because there will be quite a resistance to that. No individual director who is of eminence would like to be told his performance was not up to the mark. Nobody would like. And obviously, there are very many things in evaluation which will be a matter of value judgment. Okay? This is not something which you can measure with a measuring tape. Okay, at best you can say, अच्छा जी आप 8 वीडियो में से 5 में तो आए नहीं. It means you have not the right commitment. Okay, fine. Such things will be quantified. But when it comes to things more substantive, obviously there are available in terms of evaluation. It is not a perfect science or a discipline, but there are ways of carrying out this kind of evaluation. All of us who come from well-managed organizations, they have some form of evaluation for their own people. After all, personal appraisal is not something which is a new subject. So same thing applying at the apex level of the board. We are leaving it to the board to begin with. There may come a time, maybe a few years down the road when we are sitting in this hall and whosoever will be sitting and talking to you might say, okay, now has come the time. In 2002 there was no evaluation. In 2010 or 11, whenever it comes, there is a need for mandatory evaluation. Now is the time that when the evaluation will be done against the following benchmark. So it is a staggered approach, it's a graduated approach, and if we make a good beginning, a firm beginning along these lines, there is a whole we will improve upon that. With regard to the PICG going into the shareholding structure, please don't forget one thing. We did not want in the past and we do not want now to recommend anything which could be challenged under the law of the land. You cannot divest the shareholders short of expropriation and nationalization.